Hi there, I'm Matt Pepper. I'm a principal sales engineer based in the UK. I'm pre-recording this in case my children steal all my internet connectivity, but I am live on the chat, so please ask any questions you wish and I'll try and answer them as we go through this. The demo is about 30 minutes long, just to give you a ballpark figure of what to do. And what are we going to be doing? Well, I'm going to be recreating this dossier in front of you. This is UK pubs. This is information I found on the internet. And I'm going to then layer in different Mapbox layers. These are postcode areas and postcode districts, which are freely available from the Mapbox connectivity and is easy to just blend in without building anything at all. This is the agenda I'll be following in this demo and presentation. I'm going to show you on the Mapbox website what layers are available. Then I'm going to show you how to import data and join multiple fields together so it's easier to drag and drop onto a map. I'm then going to show you how to create multiple layers and how you can zoom from one layer to another within MicroStrategy. And then how to incorporate Mapbox with other visualizations in a free form, including how to do a responsive design in a nice clean fashion. Then at the end, I'm going to show you two new visualizations that Mapbox have got within MicroStrategy now. And if you have any customized shapes that you want to import, I'll show you how to use GeoJSON and KML files. I'm here on the demos.mapbox.com VT_polygons website. It's a really good way of actually seeing if there is a supported layer. MicroStrategy doesn't support all of these layers, but at least you can see if it's supported from Mapbox perspective. So I'm going to go to United Kingdom, or GB, and then you can see the countries of the United Kingdom. Now, for this, you can go down to the next layer of boundaries. So there's 4 boundaries here. I'm going to go to postcode area, where there's 121 different postcodes, and actually down to postcode district in this demo, and you can see there's a lot more information down there, so 2,800, and these are within, so it's that next tier. So that's what we're going to be using for this demo. So without further ado, let's get into MicroStrategy and start looking at the data. Right, so here I am. I'm going to, first of all, I've loaded some of this information into Snowflake. I can actually search for Snowflake here, and there it is. And we've got the 3 options. I am going to select the tables for this one, which is the pubs information. So on my connectivity here, I'll go to the public, and then I can drag the pubs. And what we're going to do is just have a quick look at that data as well. So in the data, what we've got is postcode, the name of the pub, the latitude, longitude, as well as the address. Now, the important thing that we need to have in our data set is this GB, which maps back to that Mapbox layer. But I can also do a few things here. Let's have a look. I'm going to the FSA ID, that is the actual pub. So I'm going to link those 4 things together. I was holding the control button whilst I was doing that. Right click and create multi-form attribute. When I do that, I can then join all these things together and call it something a little bit more. That's better. So it's much nicer to look at. We don't need the easting and the northing for this, so I'm not going to import those. So that's the pubs information. Now, what I'm also going to bring in, which I also have in Snowflake, we're going to type a query. So I'm going to click in that. Once again, you pick the correct data source, which is Snowflake, and I'm going to cheat by copying and pasting. Now in this, what we're actually going to look at here is we're going to bring postcode, longitude, latitude, but more importantly is the postcode area and district. That's the stuff that we're going to be actually using to ensure that it links to Mapbox correctly. And we're also only going to bring in information here which has got actual information from that pubs data. We don't need the 1.8 million postcodes. Okay, so I'm going to execute that now. And that's the data. Brilliant. Okay, so I can add that in. And what you can see here is that actually it's got a join already. So the join is available, the postcode to postcode with the same name, and they're also the same data type. So those are the two key things you need to do. Now I am going to ensure that postcode, latitude, and longitude are joined, and that whether we'll use that or not, but it's quite useful to have. And I'm just checking the postcode area and postcode district, and all of this is freely available on the internet, but that's a really good basis from a data perspective. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to define some relationships. So it's really useful from my perspective to define these relationships. MicroStrategy probably could do it on its own, but I'm a bit old-fashioned and I like to tell the computer what to do, not the other way around. So I am going to make sure that postcode area goes into district, money to 1, and then district goes into postcode. There are other layers, but for this example, I think this is good. And that is it. So from a data perspective, it's quite simple. We'll make some derived metrics because average income at the moment is going to be aggregated as a sum. So we'll have a look at those shortly. I'm also going to import it as an in-memory data set. So we'll have the initial hit and then it will be much, much faster and more performant. Okay, so we've got a success. We can now create the dossier. So I'm going to create that. Now for this example, what I'm going to do is actually going to have a black background. So I am going to go to the dossier formatting and I'm going to make sure the background is black. There we go. And then what I'm going to do with this one is actually change the visualization to a map, of which we've got 3 options. So we've got Esri, which is free and out of the box. We have got Mapbox, which we'll come to, and then the image layout. Now, the image layout is really, really clever. You can use store backgrounds, so a particular store, or you could use a customized map. So it's really up to you to what to do, but it's a really, really powerful one. Obviously, we're going to use Mapbox for this example. What I'm going to do for this is actually create these areas. So these are the ones that Mapbox support out of the box. So I'm going to drag postcode area in. Nothing is going to be mapped. Top tip, by the way, on here, I'm going to rename this because it's much, much easier going forwards. I'm also then going to put... Do you know what I think is better to have a table view? This is personally, I prefer to do it like this way so I can see which table it's in. I'm going to then rename that as number of pubs. And then I'm going to put that in the color by. Still nothing on the map. That's because what we need to do here is we need to make this into an area. And then select the boundaries. Now the boundary should be postcode. Now, the first time this happened, I looked at this and went, this doesn't look like the UK. And that is because it's outside China. So what I want to do then is drag in a secondary geotag. And that's just because there's a TW in China and there's TW for Twickenham in the UK at postcode area level. So I'm then going to drag in country underneath postcode area. And there we go. So now we've got the areas. The pubs, by the way, are mostly for England and Wales. Sorry, people in Scotland. I'm going to change this into a dark mode. So I'm going to go here and go to dark. And I'm going to hide that title bar because we don't really need that. Now for a colouring perspective, I'm going to go to the thresholds and I think I'm going to go for the wild berry colour. There we go. Now these are all of them, all of the different postcode areas that you saw from Mapbox earlier. I've not had to create a custom shapefile or a KML file. This has just been supported because it recognises all of those. So that's my first layer. Now I can add a second layer in. So I'm now going to create a second layer here. And I'm going to rename this one district. And then I can drag in postcode district and go through the same process again. So I'm going to drag my color in there. And I'm going to change the thresholds once again to wild berry. They don't have to be the same colors. That's just the way I'd like to do it. Now, once again, it's not showing right now because I have to change that to area. It's warning. Yep, there's 2,500. We know. And then I want to render it at that postcode layer again. So it'll recognize it. Now, I'm not sure if you can see them. If we just zoom in a little bit here, you can see them in the background. Now, I actually don't want them shown right now. So what we can do is go over here and go to Map Options. Within Map Options, around down here, you can tick the zoom through layers. So if I click that, and then I can actually change what level I want this to be on. So about 6.8, I think. And then I'm going to make this one disappear. About there. So now when I zoom in, and if you check here, it should just a minute transfer. Okay. Yeah, there's a bit of a slight lag, but that's okay. That's my computer. Yeah, okay, so that's quite nice. Now, I also want these cities being shown. So what I can do over here is bring labels to the front. You can choose to hide them or not, but I think it's good to have it on this example. So now we have got two polygons, which is postcode area and also postcode district. I can now drag in the pubs themselves. So if I go there and rename, then I'll drag pub in. So yeah, 51,000 pub. Now I don't know if you can see that once again, they've all been rendered, but actually they're underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drag here from pubs and I'm going to drag that one higher up. And this is good practice just to put them in the reverse order. So the higher aggregation should be at the bottom. And that just makes it much, much easier and much smoother when you're building these. Now for pubs, I don't once again want to see them at this layer. So I'm going to go to the settings and then I'm going to go to map options. And then I'm going to go to the pubs section and then I'm going to drag this down probably to about that layer, about 8.6 roughly. So that means now when I zoom in, if we zoom in here, you see on the left again, there's the districts and you can see that I think I might want to drag that up just a little bit more, maybe about there. Now the color itself is not particularly good, the blue. So what I'm going to go back here is actually change that color to something a bit more striking like that orange. Oh, that's quite a lot there in Manchester. Okay, so a quick recap of what we've done so far. I've brought in two tables from Snowflake, one a custom query and one a table itself. Joined those and created multiform attribute for pub. So therefore it's got latitude and longitude, and that means you can just drag it onto the map. We've then gone to the Mapbox capabilities on Dossier and then added in a postcode area and a postcode district. Both of those are supported, and that's what we looked at earlier on the Mapbox website. Then dragged in the pubs themselves and created those as the points so we can actually see the volume of them. So all of that has been done in about 10 minutes. So it's really, really powerful, really easy to do. Okay, then let's start building those extra visualizations in the freeform way. In order to turn the standard auto configuration, you can just click this button here. it's convert to auto layout. So if I click on this, you'll see that the visualization option appears here. And then the next visualization that I create is going to just pop on front. So we're going to put a bar, probably a vertical bar, and you can see it now. Instead of pushing things around, it's just come on top as a different layer. I am going to move the map probably about the halfway mark, somewhere around there. And then this is going to be our main navigation visualization. So I'm going to resize it to about there. Now, because I've already selected the vertical bar, I can just double click the postcode area and that appears, and then I can put in, let's say, the number of pubs. Now, if I put in average income, this would just be a summary at the moment, sorry, an aggregation, should I say. So what I'm going to do is actually just create a simple derived metric. So I can just right click and go aggregate by and click on average. And if I disappear, you will see down here, there is now an average income. So I can then drag that in here. Now at the moment, it looks a bit weird. That's because I need to change where the metric names are. So I want the metric names to go on the horizontal. There we go. And actually I want the metrics to be colored as well. So there we go. Now personally, I would always prefer to see the numbers on this. So I'm going to put the show the data values. And I can then see that, yep, that's probably about an average income, but I don't really want to see the decimal places. So I'm going to format my data here by going to pounds and then remove the decimals. And finally, what I want to do is also go down here and right click and sort descending based upon the actual postcode, or postcode area, should I say. Okay, so that's good. Now I need to make sure that this is transparent so we can see the background, and obviously make sure that all the numbers are white so they will be able to see them. So I can now go to settings and I can go to the container and make sure that the fill color is no. There we go, that's good. Now I don't really want to see the header, so I can remove that title bar. All I need to do now is go to the axis lines and labels, make sure that that is white. That's good. And then from a data labels perspective, we just need to make sure that they are white as well. Yeah, that looks good to me. So now I'm going to create a KPI metric. And I'm going to put that up in the top left, probably about that big. And then I'm going to put in the number of pubs. Don't need the title bar for that. And what I will also do is change the formatting on that as well. So I want to make sure that the fill color is no fill. I also want to make sure that the title container is no fill. And then I want to go back to the general settings and make sure that the numbers are white. And just to make it a little bit more interesting, a bit overlapping, I'm going to create a further visualization of a bar chart of the postcode districts, and then I'm going to put that across the top here. So I'm going to go to visualization, bar chart, and then put that about there, and then maybe about something like that. And then on the horizontal, I want to put the postcode district, and then I'm going to put the number of pubs. Now I want to make sure that these are sorted in the right order, so I want them sorted descending. Now it's a bit difficult to do it here, so what you can also do is right click here and do the sort descending. Now I just need to do from a formatting perspective, I can then once again go to the tile container and make sure that the fill color is no fill. And the container, there it is. And once again, make sure that the data labels and everything else are white. Okay. Now possibly want to make this a little bit smaller and make this just a little bit wider. And hide the title bar as well, just to give it a bit more space. Now you can see here that the these keep popping up, and that's going to be a bit distracting behind this bar as well. In 2021, you also have the option to go into the map options and hide this toolbar. So then that will just disappear, and that's really, really good once you've figured out what you want to do and you don't want people to use that those bits of navigation. And talking of navigation, I'm now going to use this here to navigate to all of the other, filter all of the other visualizations. So I'm going to use this and I'm going to select target visualizations and select all of the other and then click on apply. That means when I now click on Birmingham, it zooms straight down to that layer. Now, a top tip would be to save this with the top one already filtered. That means from a rendering perspective, it's only got 1,000 points or 1,100 points, as opposed to the 53,000 points that were already. That will make it a little bit more performant, and therefore, it's, from a navigation perspective, makes life a little bit easier for your end users. Now, if you're thinking of making sure that this is much better from a responsive perspective, there are ways of telling MicroStrategy how to fit on a smaller screen size. So maybe, let's say, from a mobile phone, or even a smaller screen. So what we can do is actually over here on the top right, there is something called a responsive preview. So if you click on that, it will render them from a top left to top right, what's called a Z format, so how your eyes read a web page. Now, that might not be the most optimum way of how it looks. So if you just click back to that. Now, what I can do is actually group things together. So if I wanted this one here and this one here grouped together, that would mean that at the top of my phone, I would have the number of pubs and also the navigation right underneath. So I can group these together. But before I do, I think it would make more sense to link those together like so. So right clicking, holding the control key, I'll right click and then I will align the set from the center perspective. So if I do that there we go, and then right click and group, that will look a bit better, I hope. So now let's go back to the responsive preview. And that to me makes it a little bit more sense from a visualization perspective. I could probably tweak it a bit more because I want that one probably lower. Or actually, do you know what? If I hide this, I don't think this is relevant for this. So what I will do is I'll go back to the full and then I'll click on this one here. And actually, I'm going to hide that one on mobile, because I don't think it's relevant from the screen real estate. So if I then go back to it, you'll see now that that has disappeared completely from the mobile perspective. And that makes it a little bit more intuitive and it looks much, much nicer on a phone format. If you want further tips on how to do a best practice on responsive design, if you go to our community site and search for best practices of responsive design, what you'll see is this fantastic article which explains how MicroStrategy does it and how you can improve things for your dossiers. New in MicroStrategy 2021, we have got two new Mapbox map styles. We've got border and we've got focused. I'm going to use the same data set to create a completely different look and feel for this data, and a way that you could use both those two styles in a different kind of dossier. So I'm just going to move to my main screen, and then I'm going to duplicate the map to a new chapter. Now I'm going to duplicate this as once more. Now I'm going to, on the first one, remove the pubs layer and the district layer. And on the second one, I'm going to remove the area layer. Now the information is still there. If I zoom in, you'll be able to see the districts, but I just wanted to set things up in such a way so you can see it. Now for this, I'm going to go from a format, and I'm just going to change the backdrop back to white. And now what I'm going to do is show you the new backgrounds. So I've got this one here, and actually this is going to target this visualization. So I'm going to do that first and foremost. So I'll select that and make that source and target. So then when I click on an area such as York, it will zoom in and you can see those particular areas. Now what I'll probably want to do is make it that layer from a zoom perspective. So if I just make sure that one's selected, map options, make that a little bit bigger. Right. Okay, now onto the different views. So for the first layer, I'm going to show the border. And what this is doing, if I just go to full screen, in fact, let's just hide that one to give you a bit more real estate. You can see that all the countries, as well as the next layer, so for example in the UK postcode area, are all supported in a nice clean fashion. Let's show the toolbar and then zoom back. So that is the border style. I think that's nice and clean, and instead of going in dark mode, it's a really good way of making things look good from a focus perspective. So, and talking of focus, let's go to that other one. So what that does, it removes all of the other noise, as in the stuff that's not being used, from the backdrop. So it's focused on whatever you're selecting. So if I go and select down here in TR, it will bring back that particular area. Now this could be very, very useful if you wanted to do further analysis without having to zoom through different layers. So if I click on here and go to more and select a bubble chart, then put that underneath, I could put the number of pubs against the average income, and then I could put the postcode districts, of which then I would want to actually show the text, and then I would like to hide those, and then let's color by the postcode districts as well. And all I need to then do is make sure that my target is on both. And then we could select a different area and have a look at a different kind of analysis. So there you go. Hopefully that's given you a new view on the border Mapbox style as well as the focus one. I'm sure you could do some really interesting stuff from an infographic perspective for this one. Finally, custom layouts. So everything I've done so far has been done with a standardized border for postcode areas or postcode districts. But what if your company has got something like a customized sales region? How can you bring that in as a power user and then use that for your maps. Well, let's go and have a look. So first and foremost, I'm going to import a new data set. Now, if you hover over here, you can see that GeoJSON and KML files are both now supported when you import them. So I'm going to import a KML file that I created for a demo a long time ago. It's a really basic one, but yeah, the same principle applies from a GeoJSON. So I'll just show you what the data looks like. And there it is. So it's quite simple. It's got some customized regions, a latitude and longitude, which actually we don't need for this, but I'll add that anyway. And then the geometry. So the geometry itself, as long as that has got, which it has here, this geo tag, it will work perfectly well. So I'm just going to import that. And you can see now there's another data source. And I'm then going to bring in another chapter, and I'm going to make sure that the visualization is Mapbox. Now, the easiest way I have found so far is to go to the settings first, select area, and then in the boundaries, select custom shape. Once you've done that, if you go then back to the editor, you will see that there's a geo attribute and geometry. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to drag name into the geo attribute, and then I'm going to drag geometry. And there you have it. There it is. That is my custom region. And as you can see, as I was drawing it, it is a bit rough and ready, but this was exactly what I was trying to do very, very quickly. So I built a KML file, but that is a customized region. And then that can now be used, and you can add points if you wanted to, and use that to drive your data. And we've come to the end of the presentation. Thank you ever so much for your time. I hope it's been of use to you. If you have any burning questions which you've not yet asked, please do so in the chat, and I'll see if I can answer them there. Hello, everyone. This is the real me with a slightly different top and kids who are eating food. So hopefully they won't interrupt us.
Yes. All right. So Matt, I know that you have already answered a number of the questions. Let me see if there's any that you haven't answered so far.
Whilst you're doing that, I was going to say there are some questions that I think are probably very good for quite a lot of people. So yeah. This is a separate license, which is geospatial services. So geospatial services is a separate, and it's an on or off, but you have to pay for that. So that's one thing to look at. Why you would get this, because we do have Esri. That's another question that came up. So the differences are the layers that you saw right at the beginning, all of those. So the postcode areas and districts, they all come out of the box. So I haven't built those. Those are created and are supported by Mapbox. So there are different layers, and all of those are supported. And all you need to do then is, in my example, the TW for Twickenham, that area there, as long as it's the ISO format, that is exactly what you need to use. So you can do this kind of stuff in Esri, but you have to manually create every single one of those layers and then also maintain it. So I think the Mapbox one renders a little bit quicker as well. So, and they've got a lot more backdrops as well. So those are the key differences. Right, Eileen. No,
it's good. You already answered them, but I agree. It's good for everybody else to hear the answer as well. There are now more questions coming in that you haven't seen yet. So one of them is there a size limit for the KML you can import into MicroStrategy?
So the best thing is to try and keep the KML file as small as possible. One of the things that generally makes it a lot smaller is the number of points. I think you only really need 2 or 3 decimal points, and that's it. You don't need anything more, because I think if I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think if anything more than 4 decimal points, you're getting down to a meter, which, to be honest, for the kind of stuff we're doing, we just don't need that level of granularity, especially when you're doing lots of coastal areas like the UK. So that's why, so that's one thing. And as long as whatever you're putting into that KML file, the attribute name is in that description part of your KML file, it will work. Those are probably the two key things. But there are things on our community site explaining how to actually create those custom KML.
Perfect, because that was another question. How do you create the KML file? So sounds like maybe yeah.
One I created was using the free software QGIS. What I did is I had information with lat long, so pubs, for example, and I've done this for many customers. So they'd have like stores, for example, and then they would have the parent, as in the region. And basically, as long as you've got that data file and then another file, which would be the country stuff, which is freely available, you'll cut those two. I think I have another video coming. How to create a KML file. Yeah.
With the Mapbox visualization, is it necessary to have one geo attribute in there for the map to render properly?
Yes. So the actual polygons themselves, you need to have something there that maps back to Mapbox. You can have points. So if you've got as I did, the pubs and the latitude and longitude, you can just do that and they'll have points. But you need to have something in there in order for it to create those polygons, and it can then go back to the Mapbox engine.
Great. This next question, it might be better to be asked in the next session. But the question is, what is coming for Mapbox visualizations for 2022?
I'll push that on to the next one.
Okay. Yeah. The next session, you'll hear from Mapbox. Yeah. You'll hear from Mapbox directly in the next session. And MicroStrategy product manager, Amy LaRush, will also be in that session. So that's probably a good question to ask that team.
Sure.
Where can we find more samples for custom shapes?
If you search for country maps and KML, he says, trying to look at it. You could, I think I've searched country files KML. There are many sites you can just go to. So like there's a world map KML file, data.gov. So basically anything like that, you can just use that as your basis. And that's pretty much what I did for my UK map. So yeah, you don't have to pay for these KML files. So yeah, that's the best way.
I missed the last point you made about geometry. Can you create custom geographic areas like districts that are custom defined by a company?
Yes. So the QGIS that I've mentioned previously. So basically, I had the stores and the latitude and longitude. So I didn't have those latitude and longitude. I actually had just the postcode or zip code. What I did is I put those postcodes into an engine on a website, and they generated the latitude and longitude. So I double checked all those things. As long as you've got that bit, then what you want to group them by, so whether that's a region or a sales territory, basically what you do is you map all the points and then use that region as a cookie cutter to create those custom regions. So that's how you do it. Great. Like I say, that video is beginning to sneak up on me, I think, how to do this.
I know you love doing videos. So is it possible to map to a 3D model versus geography?
Not currently is the answer. So if you want to do anything more, let's say nothing to do with maps and more to do with more custom things in the background, whether it's like a store, for example, as opposed to points, we have got the image layout widget, which is also available and is part of it. It's free. You have to create essentially a web page, a custom web page, and then put things on top of it. But that's, there are steps once again on our community site to do that. And also on our community site, there is a custom plugin, which one of our SEs in Korea has created, which is fantastic. And you can essentially upload a PNG file and then draw points yourself on top of it. So have a look for that as well.
What are the apps? What is the absolute minimum columns required in the KML file?
The KML file is the name, as in it's going to map to the attribute, and then the points that are drawing the polygon. That's it.
Okay. Can Mapbox geocode addresses to get latitude and longitude?
Not through MicroStrategy. You'll have to ask the product manager of Mapbox to see if they can do that. But yeah, I mean, if not, there are online sources. You can just search for it, and they can generate them as well. So you don't have to pay. Well, some of them are paid options, some of them not, depending on the volume of things you're geocoding.
Okay. This next question may also be good for the next session, but I'll ask it just in case you know the answer. Any plans to add heat maps by points, and also whether you can scale the same by both point location and metric value?
Incredibly complex question. Currently, no. I would say that's certainly something to ask in the future. So no, that's not something we can do in 2021. But yeah, certainly ask them. Grill them. Go on. Ask all these questions.
It's very convenient that your session was first, so you can deflect. Does the data have to have a certain format for Mapbox to understand it?
So for Mapbox, the only thing there's the ISO level. So if you go to that web page, demos, in fact, let me chuck that into the chat as we speak. Now, as I said in the video, this is not available. Not every single one of these layers is available in MicroStrategy at the moment, but this is whether they can change, whether they are supported by Mapbox. So you can have a look at those. Quite a few of them are by MicroStrategy, but not necessarily all of them. If you hover, you select your country and then select what layer you want to have a look at, you'll be able to see within there which ones are supported, and you'll be able to see the actual coding with it. As with the UK, depending on how high level you are, you may need to have that secondary geo tag, which is the ISO country name, as in GB for Great Britain, that you may need to drag in as well.
Okay. Well, we are out of time. Any questions that we didn't get to in Matt's session, I encourage you all to attend this session with Mapbox at the top of the hour. And ask those questions to that team. Thank you, Matt. It was a wonderful presentation, and thank you all for attending, and enjoy the rest of MicroStrategy World.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.